Welcome to Who Wrote That Up for You, a daily podcast that shines a light on the American justice system and its role in empowering the powerful to take from you. The justice system is the only branch of your government where an individual rather than the collective can make the system act for you. It puts power in the individual's hands, but it's broken and being used against you at a time when you need it most.
Welcome, welcome. Today is Monday, September 12th, 2022. I am Sonja Ebron, one of the co-founders at Courtroom 5. I'm here with Debra Slone, our other co-founder.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
We have a fantastic show for you today. Many times people ask us about Courtroom 5, where'd you get the name, right? It's a question we enjoy getting. We'll talk about that on another day. But we thought that folks might be interested in the name we gave this podcast. So I want to spend a few minutes giving you the backstory on that. I think you'll find it riveting. A little later in the show, we are going to have as a guest Brian Vukadinovich, an old friend of Courtroom 5. He is one of the most sophisticated and frequent pro se litigants or self-represented litigants in America's courts. He's got a best-selling book on his experiences, and he's doing some really interesting advocacy work for self-represented litigants in the courts. So we'll talk with him a bit about those experiences. But before we get there, Deborah, what's our issue of the day?
I want to talk a little bit about the issue of, in a larger context, homelessness and about courts facing adverse possession claims where people are basically they see a house. It doesn't always happen this way, but they see a house or land that no one's using. They move in, they stay there for what, 10 years, 20 years. In fact, most states have allowed people to claim um, adverse possession after sometimes 10, 20 years. There are only two states that have 30. So that issue keeps coming up because there are a lot of people that need housing, and there are some empty houses out there. So I think that's one of the things that makes our courts so important is that people can go to court and say, look, I've possessed this land for a period of time, and I feel like that it's mine.
Wouldn't that be a tremendous solution to the homeless crisis? If people just started claiming, land. I think it's obviously pretty difficult. We're not the first ones to imagine that sort of a solution, but wouldn't it be extraordinary if we had some sort of mass movement? I think there was, in fact, I read a story last year, maybe the year before, about some mothers who had occupied a home in Oakland, if I'm recalling that correctly. They worked out some sort of a settlement where they could buy the property, as I recall correctly. If I recall correctly, I'd love to see more people doing that. I suspect your issue of adverse possession was a part of their arguments for being able to drive a settlement there. That's fantastic. That is fantastic. All right. Well, great. Thank you for bringing up that story. Let me take a quick commercial break here. Our podcast is sponsored by Courtroom 5. As I indicated at the beginning, Debra and I are the founders of it. At Courtroom 5, we believe the courts belong to the people. In particular, they belong to the people who use them. And we, the people, are coming to claim our courts. So if you're in court without a lawyer, or if you need to sue someone and can't afford a lawyer to represent you, get yourself over to courtroom5.com today. Try it for free, and you'll find out whether it works for you or not. We'll tell you a bit more about that a little later in the show. Right now, though, I did want to share with you the backstory for the name. Who wrote that up for you? So Deborah and I bought a house, just before the economy collapsed back in 2008. Many of you will remember that. We asked for a mortgage modification from our bank a couple of times, and they denied us. Now, they were threatening foreclosure, and we allowed them to just go ahead and make those threats. Deborah and I, as it turns out, are fairly overeducated. I'm a PhD electrical engineer. Deborah has a PhD in information scientist. She's a librarian.
Right.
And more importantly, though, we knew how to handle ourselves in court. So we let the bank sue us for foreclosure. Our strategy was to delay progress in the case and maybe drive a more favorable settlement than many others at that time were getting. Now, at some point in the case, we had moved to subpoena two vice presidents of the bank, as well as the bank's lawyer, and we scheduled a hearing on that motion. I want to play for you just a couple minutes. Recorded audio. I want to share that with you. You hear my voice. Hear my voice. There are a few things just for a couple of minutes. So we can go ahead and now, there are, as I mentioned, a couple of other witnesses that we need to depose. It is the Chase vice president who verified the attachment of the assignment in October of 2012. We believe the court needs to know whether she will testify to that fact at trial or rather admit to perjury in her verification. Court needs to know that to determine whether is in fact a necessary witness. We've already handled that matter is, again, the Chase employee who executed the December assignment on behalf of MERS. That assignment, mind you, stated that MERS, and I quote from the assignment, does hereby assign, transfer, and set over unto Chase the subject mortgage. That's in direct contradiction to verification just 6 weeks earlier that the mortgage had already been assigned, transferred, and set over to Chase. And so we believe the court needs to know how he was able to make that assignment or whether, in fact, he was unable to make the assignment. The court needs to know that to determine whether, again, Ms. is a necessary witness in this case. I would just point out finally here that by drafting and filing the initial complaint with the Chase vice president's verification, essentially attested to the existence of an earlier assignment. Now, we all understand that an attorney representing a client doesn't make factual statements on any personal knowledge. She's simply representing the client. But again, a quick aside, if little Johnny throws a baseball bat through a neighbor's window and a lawyer representing that neighbor writes a complaint saying Johnny threw the ball through the window, that's the client's statement. But if the attorney attaches the ball with shards of glass to the complaint and attests to that in the complaint, well, that's some personal knowledge involved there, that the ball is attached to the complaint. And that's essentially what we have in this case. And we would suggest that herself attested to the attachment of an October 2012 assignment on the initial complaint. In contrast, by drafting, preparing, and recording the December assignment, she essentially attested to the non-existence of that very earlier assignment. And so I think I'm sorry? Who wrote that up? My handwriting. I think the court needs to hear her explanation of those contradictions. And so, as you heard there, the judge interrupted me to ask who wrote our argument. Now, I was prepared to answer any of her legal questions. I was prepared to rebut the argument of the bank's lawyer. I was not prepared, as you heard there, to explain to her to identify the person who had written our argument. Debra and I wrote that argument, and I had the pleasure of delivering it. To be asked in the middle of an argument, right? In the middle of an argument, can you tell us the intelligent person who wrote the argument? That's a little dumbfounding for me, but that's par for the course in American courts. The judge, mind you, had no legal questions for me. She found our argument compelling, even after hearing the bank's lawyer's response. So, she granted that day all of our requests. Ultimately, a few years later, we had a great outcome in the case, but that judge's response really sums up, still today, for me, why we're here today, and that is the state of American courts. When you get, when you get a judge who can only ask you, what intelligent person wrote your argument when you don't have legal training. Well, that's, that's a problem for all of us.
Yeah, she was very engaged though, and I like that part.
She agreed with the entire argument. I have to share it. I really wasn't offended. I laughed in the moment because I was actually flattered. I understood as I was delivering the argument and getting her visual responses that she agreed, right? And so I was somewhat flattered when she had to ask that question. But I have to say, what we want to do with this podcast uh, is to prepare millions of us, millions of Americans, to draw that question from judges all day, every day, until they stop asking things like that. They stop asking, how could you have been prepared to make this sort of argument? So anyway, that's the story behind our title. We found again that it really sums up the experience of pro se litigants in U.S. courts these days, and we've got to fix that. So thanks for your attention on that story. You will find we'll list it in the show notes a longer recording of that hearing, so you can get a little bit more of the flavor of it. But that was enough for today. Deborah, what is our challenge for today?
All right, our challenge for today is, what is the difference between a motion and a pleading? We do a daily challenge to kind of tap into the litigation issues and things people who represent themselves in court need to know. And each day I'll present a challenge and announce the winner the following day. So that's today's question. What is the difference between a motion and a pleading? And you can see it on the screen there. And if you want to take the challenge, just send in your responses to quiz@courtroom5.com.
Fantastic, fantastic. So we hope to see some of those answers over the next 24 hours, and we will highlight the winning answers. First come, first serve. First person to get it right will get a shout out here on the show. But this is just our effort to just sort of share some information and better prepare, again, the millions of us who are dealing with this court system every year without basic knowledge on how to do litigation. Let me share just another brief commercial break. We have a number of customers at Courtroom 5 who share their experiences with us. I want to share the experience of Susan. A year after her divorce, she was offered a higher paying job about 50 miles away from her home. She was really happy about it. She thought the move would be great for her and her three kids. Her ex-husband, Phil, didn't really oppose it. He'd only visited the kids a couple times during the course of their after their divorce over the previous year. So he didn't really oppose it, but he got married in that time as well. And the new wife, they didn't have any kids. She wanted him to oppose the motion and to move for joint custody. She wanted him to have access to his kids. They hired a lawyer. They moved for joint custody. Susan couldn't afford a lawyer, but she needed to obviously move out of town to accept that paying job and get that thing handled. Going to court without a lawyer is terrifying for most people. In fact, many just won't do it. Especially when the other side has a lawyer and you're just going to get beat up by that lawyer. But at Courtroom 5, our goal is to help you move through the legal process without getting beat up. We provide the tools, the training, the services to help you be effective when you represent yourself in court. And when you do need legal advice or some help on complicated or time-consuming litigation tasks, you may have access to a lawyer in our network on a piecemeal basis. So rather than paying tens of thousands to a lawyer, large retainers, and $300 an hour, maybe you only pay a few $100s every now and again on the most difficult aspects of your case, and just to get you out of the tough spots while you manage your litigation on your own. At Courtroom 5, we believe the courts belong to the people. In particular, they belong to the people who use them. And we, the people, are coming to claim our courts. So if you're in court without a lawyer, or if you need to sue someone and can't afford a lawyer, get yourself over to courtroom5.com. Try it for free. All right, fantastic. Now it is my great pleasure to welcome to the show Brian Vukadinovich. How are you there, Brian?
Hey, Sonja, how you doing? Hi, Debra.
Hi.
Great to see you again. Listen, we wanted to have you on. I wanted to let the audience know we tried this podcasting thing. What was it? A couple of years ago, and we wanted to talk then exclusively to self-represented litigants like yourself. And you were kind enough to be our first guest on that podcast. And so we thought it only fitting that we have you back to be our first guest as we launched this version of it. So welcome to who wrote that up for you. Really
Thank,
great to see you. Just want to spend a
thank you,
couple
Sonja.
minutes with you, Brian. You've been in court forever since you were a young man. I know. Can you take just a minute or two and sum up the experience you've had with American courts?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a mixed bag. As you said, I've been in the courts forever. To make a long story short, started out with a false arrest. I was vindicated in court on a false arrest by police and so forth, and I was retaliated against by the same police, and things got worse and worse and worse. In this country, it seems like when you stand up for yourself, although you're supposed to have the right to do that, there certainly is a penalty for that in many situations. I think the country is beginning to see a lot of things that we didn't know about as a country, starting from the George Floyd saga not too long ago. Luckily, video cameras came along and showed us what's actually going on behind the scenes with a lot of police arrests, and there's been plenty other ones since Floyd. And then when you get into the courts, I know I was listening earlier. When you start dealing with judges, we have a problem with judges in this country. We have a very serious problem. Judges are every single judge, state and federal, is required to take an oath that they're going to follow the Constitution and
Mm,
do things according to what the Constitution and the laws say. But I can tell you, they don't all do that. I think it's actually a great majority of them don't do it. Once they put that black robe on, they feel so empowered that they can do whatever they want, and that's exactly what they do. The statistics are showing in civil case overwhelmingly are dismissing people's cases against corporations and government agencies, and that needs to stop. It's been going on for too long. The Seventh Amendment to the Constitution of the United States entitles everybody in this country to a jury trial, and that's not happening. It's not happening. They fall woefully short. I've actually asked U.S. courts administrations for some statistics on that as to how many cases are being dismissed every year. And in this day and age, for them to tell me that they don't keep those kinds of records is ridiculous in the
mm,
computerized age today. So the judicial system doesn't want the people to know what's going on in the courts. As you said just a couple of minutes ago in your introduction, you said that we, the people, need to start paying attention and taking a stand with the courts. And we certainly need to do that because these judges need to understand that we, the people, we pay their salaries. We pay for those courtrooms and so forth. And we demand not only accountability, but as litigants, we demand fairness, and that has not been happening by any stretch of the imagination.
mm,
Uh, and if I can go on just for a second here, we have a House and a Senate Judiciary Committee in this country, and they're supposed to be monitoring things that are going on, particularly in the federal judiciary. And I know for a fact because I've contacted them myself and I've spoken to a lot of other people that have done so as well, and they don't even want to respond. They don't want to deal with issues that they know if we had public hearings and we had citizen litigants appear in front of the judiciary committees in a public hearing that was shown in front of the media, that we as a country would finally begin to realize just how unfair, and I'm going to say it, corrupt the judiciary is. And I know that's a strong word, but I strongly believe that our judiciary is very unfair and to a great degree very corrupt. We've had several judges already been getting caught in these schemes with putting minorities in jail, and they put them in these certain prisons, uh, private prisons that they've been in cahoots with the owner of these private prisons, and then they get kickbacks and so forth. All you got to do is Google it, and you can see it.
Absolutely.
What
Absolutely.
so
Thank you,
we have a
Brian.
big problem.
We have a big problem, and that's one of the things certainly we want to be able to highlight on this show. And so, you mentioned the large rate of dismissals. You have a signature case where you managed to wade through all of those complicated procedures. So we don't have much time here, but I did want to just have you share briefly with our audience your experience in the federal case that brought
Mhm.
you claim to fame.
Yes. To make a long story short, I was a teacher in Indiana and taught at a certain school corporation in northern Indiana for 8 years, and then they took my job away from me. They called it a RIF, a reduction in force, and I knew that was nonsense because there were a lot of underlying things going on that you find out about as things go along. That goes back to prior situations with litigations and so forth. As I said, there's a penalty to pay. And the government's real coy about how they do these things when they want to actually retaliate against somebody. So I took them to task. I filed a federal lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the Northern Division District in Indiana, in Hammond, Indiana. And we had a 5-day jury trial. My judge was Judge Philip Simon. He was the chief judge at the time. And I have to be honest. I mean, it was kind of a rocky road here at the beginning when things happened. When we got going with the case, and he was making comments to me about proceeding pro se and so forth. So we
Mm.
butted heads on that issue for quite a while, actually. But I have to be fair to him. After the trial got started, although I wasn't very happy with him the first couple of days of the trial, he kind of saw the light. Actually, that you know
Mm.
what he actually does know what he's doing here, and he actually does have a strong case. And then he started actually becoming a fair judge. So I give him credit for that. And
Wow.
we had a verdict. It was a 5-day trial, and I won the verdict. So it's a very difficult process to go through. You have to, as you were talking, a great question by Debra earlier. What is the difference between a motion and a pleading?
Don't you
Those are
answer
the kinds of questions
questions ahead of
people
time.
need to know about. Basic questions. If as a pro say, if you don't know the basics,
Yeah,
you have no chance.
yeah, yeah.
So people need to
Absolutely.
get a law dictionary and get on courtroom 5 and get the help that you avail them to. And it can make it, a lot of them try to wing it, and
Yeah,
that will not work. Trust
yeah.
me.
Oh, that's the truth. I appreciate that shout out. We're not paying for this endorsement for sure, but
Absolutely not. I don't say anything that I don't believe
yeah,
in. Anybody that
that's
knows
right.
me knows that.
You've sent lots of people to us, and we appreciate that. Let me just the last 30 seconds we have here, Brian. Where can people find your book to learn more about your story, and where can they find you online?
Okay, my book is on Amazon as well as a ton of other outlets, Barnes and Noble, Walmart. It's all over the place, and my website has a lot of my interviews and my writings on it. It's www.brianvukadinovich, Vukadinovich.com. No space between first and last name. And if they go to my website, and I'm very happy with my website, people are really looking at it. I have over 72,000 hits on it so far. So people are looking at it. I have a lot of, I think, informative writings on there if people would like to see it. So I know, and let me say this in closing here. I know you two ladies have done a great job starting up Courtroom 5. I've seen all of the write ups that you've received, all of the awards and so forth that you've been given, and that speaks to a lot about what you're doing there. And to have two ladies like yourselves be able to do such an important thing. The people need to really appreciate that and actually take advantage of it.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, thank you so much, Brian. We really appreciate you sharing your story here. We'll make sure in the show notes that we can point people to your website and other places where you can be found online, and we will have you back. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was my honor to be here. Thank you.
Brian.
All right, Deborah. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about a lot here. I know we've just got a minute or two left with our audience, but there's so much that we need to fix in American courts because this is a branch of our government. We pay, the salaries of everybody who works there, and even if we didn't, it's ours, right? It's got to serve us better than it currently does. And so, as I listen to Brian in particular, I mean, we've got to remove this bias against the massive number of people representing themselves in court. We've got to help people get a fair shake when they appear.
Yeah, and it talk about when you talk about the courts, we always should be talking about empowerment. And the issue about the adverse possession is all about empowerment and all about people going in and understanding what their legal issue is and asking the courts to help them resolve those issues.
Absolutely. As you said at the in the intro, this is a branch of government that is designed to help all of us level up. It's designed for the individual. So we've got to make it work. All right. That's all we have for you today. We are planning to do this week every weekday. So hope to see some answers to the quiz that Deborah proposed, and we'll get the answers out to you tomorrow. I hope to see you all live here again tomorrow. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see you then.
Are you feeling beleaguered, angry, or afraid, as if things are spinning out of control and you're powerless to stop them? It's easy to just let things slide and hope they don't get worse. But they often do get worse. The thing is, you're not powerless. Our courts belong to us, and their purpose is to give power to the powerless. Don't let your grievances pile up without redressing them. You can handle this in court. Or, if someone takes you to court, you can take them to school.